Hello there guys, and welcome back to our car modeling tutorial. And today I think what we will do is work on our side view mirrors here and maybe get the honeycomb mesh put together as well. So we've got quite a few different vents. We have some vents down here, maybe not so much here. Then we have our larger vent on the back here as well. There is a section that we missed, which can add in at any point really, but there is some honeycomb inside there too. So what we're going to need to do today is create the actual mesh itself. Now I'm not going to go through that in too much detail because I do have a video which goes through that for the most part, so I'll maybe go through that fairly quickly. For the wing mirror here, it's fairly straightforward too, so I think for that what we'll do is we'll talk through the plan of action for it, and then we'll speed up the majority of the actual modelling itself. So we'll start with the mirror, and for the mirror here we can see we've got that highlighted quite nicely on the blueprints here. It's a fairly simplistic shape, and then we can see that we go down into the actual stalk of it here, which again kind of overlaps, which is going to make our life fairly easy here. So it looks like what we'll do is we'll probably make this out of two separate sections. We'll create a primitive where we will extrude this out to create the shape, and then we'll create a brand new primitive on the top there as well. So firstly let's create a box. And what we'll do with this box here is this box will make the actual shape for our base here. So what we'll do is we'll bring this down to roughly the correct position here. So we'll maybe keep this fairly thin because it might bulge out at one point, which we can add in after. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of follow this line here for the front, this line here for the back, just to kind of get that bend into it. So we'll see something like, if we can highlight this again, see something like this, and then we'll bring this down here. And then we'll want to make sure that we're getting this in the correct position in our top view too. So it's going to be fairly tricky to see, but we can see based on the actual trajectory of this here that we're going to be following the curvature of the headlight. Now we're probably going to be a little bit further in, like so, and then something like that. So whilst we're here, let's bring this bit here down as well. Maybe bring that bit down slightly too. And essentially what we're going to do here is we're just going to extrude this all the way down. We're going to follow the curve. We're going to make sure that we're maintaining the curve in this top view here, so we can see that's curving to the side quite nicely. And then we're going to make sure that we're maintaining this curve as we go down and into the wing too. So I think I'll speed this up as I extrude and put these into position, and then we'll catch up on the next section there. Okay guys, so you can see here that we followed that down quite nicely, we extruded in. I added an additional line on the top here, just to give it a little bit of curvature on the face, and also did the same to this bottom section here, again, just to give it a little bit of curvature so it's not too flat. I then beveled these edges here because I don't want them to be too sharp. I think if I had a little bit more time I'd probably bring these a little bit closer together, simply just by grabbing the vertices here, pulling these ones down and these ones back up. But in the interest of time, I'll leave mine as it is. And you can see now, when we hit 3 here and smooth that off quite nicely, we've got a nice little curve inside there, nothing too sharp, which looks pretty good. Now, what we'll do for the next section is we are going to create this by using a plane. So we'll bring this back here. As part of this plane, we don't want to have any subdivisions on this as yet, so we'll take those down to 1. If we bring this up roughly into position here, what we're going to do with this is we're going to use this to outline the front side of our section here. So what we're going to do is we'll rotate this here, and we'll want to go for a rotation of -90 on the x-axis there. And essentially what we're going to do with this is we are going to map out our actual the actual shape of our headlight here. Now it might actually be easier to use the rear, so if we bring this back here just for now, and look at our back perspective, as we can see it'll be easier to kind of go around all of this section here. So let's bring this up, and we're going to want to keep this fairly low detail just for now. So we can bring this down around something like this here, and we're going to want to try and make sure that we match the whole way around too. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab this edge and we're going to extrude this all the way along here. And we'll start the extrusion round, and as we do we also want to make sure that we keep this rotated quite nicely. We'll do something like that. Now what we're going to want to do is try and again keep this very similar either side, so we're just going to go for one kind of actual side-on section there. And we can bring this down here, so this one is going to match up here. Hit E again, we can sort the rotations afterwards. So this one's going to match here, this one is going to match here. So we'll take that around here. Extrude along again, which is going to match this edge. Maybe go 1 and 2 here. So we'll grab this and do the same. So I'm going to go 1 and 2. And then we will just simply do another side on vertical section here. And then we can bring that around, and this can merge down here. So what we're going to do with this, whilst we're fairly low detailed, is we're just going to make sure we're following this whole bend quite nicely, which we are already for the most part. We just want to make sure that we've got these lines rotating around nicely so that they're giving off the correct kind of angle. Like so. Okay, so that's not looking too bad. Just bring this one back here. Looks like we'll want to adjust this one too. So now that we've got that looking pretty good here, what we're going to want to do is take that down to this section, and hopefully we'll be able to just simply rotate and match that in, because we want to keep the nice straight edge which we've just associated with that section there. So that's looking pretty good. So what we're going to want to do now is we are going to want to grab all of these top edges, not including the side ones just for now. So I'm going to grab all of these, and we'll hit extrude, and we'll take these in. Looks like I've selected the wrong edge there. Let's grab that again. So we'll take all of these, and we're going to do this in there. Maybe we'll do it in the top view. So we'll extrude these in here. And what we want to do with these is make sure that these edges are following quite nicely. Now we don't want to go all the way to the actual end point, so we just want to make sure we're following quite nicely all the way around the general curve of this element here. So we'll go something like that. See, that looks pretty good. And then we'll want to grab all of these vertices here, and we'll want to kind of pull them down so we're running on the correct kind of shape, which is something like that there. Pull these two down a little bit lower. This one as well. And then we'll pull this one up. Something like that. Okay. And then we're just going to want to do the same to the bottom ones here. So it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we want to add another line inside here. Something like that. So we'll grab these 5 and take these in. So, and then we'll kind of pull those into position as well. And we'll want to do the same again here. Bring these roughly into the correct spots. And what we'll want to do here is, I think we'll just want to make sure that we're sitting nicely on top of this section here. So just sitting something like that, which looks good. And then what we'll do is we will bridge the gap here. So we'll select the two, and we'll hit bridge. We'll do the same for each of these here. Oops. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. And what we'll do is we'll grab an edge loop around here. Now what I want to do with this is just make sure it's fairly straight. So we can see here that we've got a few bobbles inside the geometry here, so we'll just straighten those out a little bit. That's fine. And then we're going to want to use this to create the final bit of the curvature. I might have selected something I don't want there. So we'll bring this out just to make that last ditch curve. And we'll be able to see at the top here how far out we'll actually need to come with this. So I want this just to kind of finish off the curve that we started in between the two there. It's looking quite nice. And then here we can again bridge the gap. We can do the same here. That's looking pretty good. So what we can also do, if you want to add a little bit more curve to it, we can create another edge loop just here. And we can just grab each of these points, just pull them up ever so slightly. And then we also want to maintain that we've got a little bit of a curve down here as well, so we're going to want to pull this out a fair amount too. So it's looking pretty good. What we'll also do real quick is we will grab all these faces here, and I am going to fill the hole, and then we're going to select that face and we are going to edit mesh and extract. So we've got an independent face inside of here now, and what we'll do is we'll want to make sure that we have our geometry inside here as well. So we're basically just going to match up all the geometry that we drew in earlier. So all these lines here can match up quite nicely, like so. And that's all for it, that's fine. And what we'll want to do with this is, let's quickly just center the pivot, and I'm just going to drag that in, like so. Because what we're going to do with all of these edges here is we're going to hit Ctrl E, and on the same axis we're just going to drag those in as well. Something like that. So maybe in the mirror here we won't pull in quite so far. And then for smoothing this section here, what we're going to want to do again is grab all of these exterior edges and inside here, and we are going to bevel these two, and faction looks okay. Maybe go something like, we'll leave that, give it a 0.5 I think, and set 3. So we can see that the whole curve for that is already curved around quite nicely. The only real issues is the actual glass section here. So what we'll do is make sure that we're in our component view here, and we're just going to pull these until they're inside, like so. That'll be fine for now. So that there's looking pretty good. The only real thing that I would change here is this section, because it does look like this section follows a little bit closer and further around here, so we can maybe pull that up. We'll do this whilst we're in the smooth mode, something like that. Just looks a little bit better there. So we're quite happy with that, that's looking pretty good. So what we want to do now is quickly move on to our honeycomb mesh. So what we will do is we'll start with a basic plane for this. Now again, what I'll probably do is link in the description a video in which I talked in some decent detail for this. But what we'll do is we'll start with a plane here. By default mine's 10 by 10 subdivisions on here, so we'll just bring this up to size quite nicely. And what we wanted to do is create some basic honeycomb mesh, which is going to go inside the actual grill at the back here, and it's going to go inside the grills and the vents at the front as well. And basically what it looks like to me is, on the reference images, that we do the larger size here for the rear, and then the front section is basically just a scaled down version of what we put in the rear. So we'll make one and then we can duplicate that more and more. And basically what we want to do here is we're going to be using a flat plane. We're going to create our actual sections in which we will extrude in for the honeycomb sections, and then we'll need to tile them until we have as many as we actually need. So what we're going to do is we are going to grab edges inside here. So we're going to grab edges on our first section, we're going to skip 2, grab edges again, skip 2, and we'll grab these edges again. So we've just got an edge every 2 sections. We are going to go to bevel here, and then we're going to crank our fraction all the way up to the top. So we can see now that we've got some nice honeycomb kind of grid going on in here. Now what we have in the Koenigsegg is larger sections. So generally what we would have to do is maybe narrow these down a little bit so they're not so thick for some cars, but for our Koenigsegg here this should fit quite nicely. And what we want to do with this now real quick is we want to take away all of these edges going down the side here, and then do the same with the ones at the top, because we only want the actual curved bits that are looking good. So take all of these away here. We also want to tile this, so that means that this section here is also no good for us, because we want these edges to insert nicely on those ones as well. So I can grab all of these here. Let's just select them all and delete. So that means now that this, once duplicated, can sit nicely inside there as well. Now, we need to tidy this up a little bit more. So we are going to grab all of these edges here, and these edges here, and we are going to edit mesh and delete edge and vertices. So now we have this section inside here. And then what we want to do is grab all of the edges that come as part of this as well. Inside here, we want to tidy these up, and we just want to press delete, because this time we want to maintain the vertices in order to keep the shape inside there as well. So again, we'll highlight all of these. Now you guys could make a bigger one by default, but I find that it's generally a little bit easier to make a small version and then just duplicate it and merge it as required. So we can see now that we're looking pretty good just there. So what we'll do is we'll rotate this here, just so it's facing forwards. And we also want to scale this down at this point here. Now, we don't actually have a decent view of the rear mesh to know how big it actually is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to eyeball it using the front here, so something like that looks pretty decent to me. Again, we can resize it as we go anyway. It's not a huge deal. So what we're going to want to do just now is we're going to want to tile this so it's about the width of the car. So with what we've just created here, we're going to hit Ctrl D, and we're just going to pull this along here. And we're just going to pull it so it's roughly in line with this section here. We're going to select the two, we're going to go to Mesh, and we are going to go to Combine, and then we are simply going to merge all of the vertices that are going down this edge here. So we can just select those here and hit G. So we just want all of these here to merge straight down that section there, and we're just going to repeat that process over and over until we've got a large enough section to cover the amount of information that we require. So I'm going to do this just now. I'll speed it up, I'll make the size that we require, and then we'll talk about the extrusions afterwards. Okay guys, so we've got a nice little grid here now. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to keep this. I'm not going to delete any of it, because we don't know exactly how much we'll need for these larger squarer sections as I'm kind of basing it off. what we have on this rear section right here. So what we'll do with this is I'm just going to pull it out to the side here, maybe go to this side so it doesn't interfere with the blueprints on the right hand side there. I'm just going to hit Ctrl D just to duplicate this again, and this time we're going to bring it back into this side here. I'm going to grab all the faces and we are going to extrude these faces in. Now what we want to do here is we want to actually keep faces together off, because we want all these to kind of separate from the center here. We're not going to do this on the world option either, we're going to keep it relative, and we're just going to pull these in slightly, and as well as pulling them in on the center here, we're just going to pull them down on the top, because it's not going to be the same length on there by doing it uniformly due to the difference in the widths. Also just going to push that in ever so slightly. I'm going to hit Ctrl E a second time. This time it doesn't matter if the faces are together or not, because none of them are touching. Again, I'm just going to scale in uniformly, just like that. And I'm just going to pull in again, just so we've got a little bit of depth to this. And then finally, I'm going to hit Ctrl E one last time. I'm going to take it all the way in. Something like that should be fine. And then hit delete whilst all of those there are selected. So we can see now that we've got some really nice mesh that we can see straight through. Again, we can remove the wireframe there so we can see that we've got a nice uniform mesh in this section here. And essentially what I'm going to do with this is firstly I'm going to duplicate it again, just because that size may work fine for these. I'm just going to duplicate that, and what we'll do is I'll put it in place roughly for this first section here. So I'm going to use X here to just snap that to the center of the grid, like so. I think what we might do is we'll see about adding a bit of this grid to this underside here, just to kind of give it a little bit of differentiation. And what we'll actually do for this is we are going to pull it roughly into position, and then we are just going to make sure that it's kind of following the actual lines of the car itself. So we can see here that if we pull out, we can see that it's roughly lining up with the front here, but it's actually protruding as well. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to grab all the faces here, and we're just going to delete a whole bunch of these faces, and we just want to delete it roughly so that it's all that we actually need. So we'll bring it down something like so. So we can see that we actually don't need the majority, well, a huge portion of what's down here either, because of the diffuser. So we'll take all of those and delete those too. Now when we delete on the side here, you want to make sure that we're deleting the same amount as we have on this side. So by snapping that in the center, it should align half decently. So if we double check over here, so our tire is going halfway through one, so we've got to hope that it is the same here, which it is, so that's fine. So what we could do is we could maybe go up until that point, that looks okay. So I think the same is like so. So we're going through. Yeah, so that looks okay. So we can delete that. And what we're going to want to do here is there's a few ways we can do this. We can use a lattice deformer, and we can do soft selection, but I generally like to use the soft selection so it's not getting too messy. And what I'm going to do is in the front view here is I'm just going to grab all of the very bottom rows, something like, maybe we'll go something like that. So we can see that we have this lower section needs to be sat further in than the higher section here. So I'm going to hit B on the keyboard. We can see that our soft selection is on. Now we could rotate this, but the problem with rotating it means that our vent then will be angled down, which we actually don't want it to be. We can see in our soft selection here, after pressing B, that we now have our vertices which kind of change colour as they go. So inside our tool options here, we can go down to our soft selection section, and the fall off radius here is going to adjust how strong this bend is actually going to be. So I'm going to try something like 1.2. So we can see that the brighter sections down here is going to move a lot further than our top sections up here. So what we could do is we could test that first. So that's looking pretty decent. So we can see there that pulling this back to something like that is looking pretty good. So that looks okay. So what we actually want to do is we're going to want to grab a lot of our front section here. We're going to want to make sure we're grabbing the same amount on either side. So maybe go from grid point to grid point there. And I'm going to increase the fall off radius here to something like 1.6 maybe. But again, these values may be a little bit different for you. So you just want to keep playing with them until it's where you want it to be. I'm going to kind of want this to sit over there, so it looks like maybe I need to boost up a little bit more. That looks good. So I've got 3 there. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this forward. So we can see that we're getting a nice curve to this section here. Pull that forward, maybe not quite that much. Something like that. And what I like to do is then increase the fall off radius again, well, the actual selection again, just so that we're maintaining a nice curve rather than having anything coming out to a point. Okay, so I think that looks okay. Okay, so we can see there that that's looking pretty decent inside there, which is good. So what we want to do with this now is, now that this is sitting how we want it to do, is we are just going to want to essentially select, we can hit B to turn that back off. We're just going to want to select any face that we don't actually see at any point and just delete them, just to make sure that we're optimizing here in terms of our poly count on our model. So we can delete all of these down here. And you just want to double check, make sure you're not deleting anything that you actually need, which is fine. So I'll speed this up as we go, and then we'll have a think about what's next. Okay guys, so what I think I'm going to do now is I am going to grab this and I'm going to run it and stick it inside every section where it's required. So in here, down the front here, and in the back here as well. Okay, I'll speed this up. In the next episode what we'll do is we will build the wheels. I think the next episode will be the final episode, which is pretty good. And the model itself is looking pretty decent. There are a few bits that need adding, but I'm sure at this point you could have a think about how to add those in yourself. So I'll add these in, and like I said, next episode we'll do the wheels, and then I'll probably talk about the car that we'll be modelling next.